السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We continue inshallah ta'ala with the book of al-Murbi, شرح زاد المستقنع, and this is where we stopped at that statement ويحرم استقبال القبلة واستدبارها, and this is in the chapter of al-Istinja. In the chapter of al-Istinja, where I would read first, inshallah, and hopefully you have, instead of going up and following the matn of Zad al-Mustaqni', I will just read one time where we covered from the beginning of the chapter. So when he said first, باب الاستنجاء, he said, يستحب عند دخول الخلاء قول بسم الله أعوذ بالله من الخبث والخبائث وعند الخروج منه غفرانك الحمد لله الذي أذهب عني الأذى وعافاني وتقديم رجله اليسرى دخولا ويمنى خروجا عكس مسجد ونعل واعتماده على رجله اليسرى وبعده في فضاء واستتاره وارتياده لبوله مكانا رخوا ومسحه بيده اليسرى إذا فرغ من بوله من أصل ذكره إلى رأسه 3 ونتره 3 وتحوله من موضعه ليستنجي إن خاف تلوثا ويكره دخوله بشيء فيه ذكر الله تعالى إلا لحاجة ورفع ثوبه قبل دنوه من الأرض وكلامه فيه وبوله في شق ونحوه ومس فرجه بيمينه واستنجاؤه واستجماره بها واستقبال النيرين. This is where we stopped. And I would read, if you follow also, just a few masail here, and then we'll go through the sharh, what's in front of us, inshallah. So this is here where we stopped. He says, وَيَحْرُمُ استقبال القبلة واستدبارها في غير بنيان ولبثه فوق حاجته وبوله في طريق وظل نافع وتحت شجرة عليها ثمرة. So this is first. Let's look here. He says ويحرم. So after he talked about what's mustahab, what's recommended, and what's makruh, now he says what's haram, what's not permissible according to the madhab when it comes to the subject of al-istinja. He says ويحرم استقبال القبلة واستدبارها. Istiqbal is to face something, and now we're more familiar with the alif sin ta, right? So when you see the word starts with this, that means this is an action from the doer to do this verb or this action. So al-istiqbal is to face something, and al-qibla is the direction, and it's, as you see, it's kind of the same root. So istiqbal al-qibla. So ويحرم استقبال القبلة, it's haram to face the qibla. واستدبارها. استدبارها, الدبر is the end of things, is the back of things. So استدبارها is to give your back to the qibla. واستدبارها, and the ha here refers to the qibla. So ويحرم استقبال القبلة واستدبارها, it's haram to face the qibla or to give one's back to the qibla. في غير بنيان. في غير بنيان, in other than bunyan, and bunyan is a structure or a building from al-bina. So now let's read the Zad with al-Rawd. He says ويحرم استقبال القبلة واستدبارها حال قضاء الحاجة, in the state of قضاء الحاجة, relieving one's need, which is basically being in the bathroom, going to the bathroom while a person is sitting, whether it's urinating or defecating. So while the act is going, So this is basically what the mas'ala is. في غير بنيان, in other than a building. That means in the openness. So the madhab is upon the opinion that it's not permissible to face the qibla or to give your back to the qibla if a person is in the openness without any being or relieving himself, not in a building. لخبر أيوب مرفوعا, because the khabar, and al-khabar is a terminology or a word, oftentimes it refers to everything, the hadith of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, and also might be a statement of a sahabi or a tabi'i, but it depends on how it's used. So here it refers to the hadith. Hadith of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari radiallahu anhu marfu'an. Marfu'an, that means he said that the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام said, إذا أتيتم الغائط فلا تستقبلوا القبلة ولا تستدبروها ولكن شرقوا أو غربوا. متفق عليه. Which means he says, if you come to أتيتم, you, and this is the ta'mim here for the plural, the second person, إذا أتيتم, if you, the third person, إذا أتيتم, if you come to al-gha'it. Al-gha'it is the place where you relieve yourself. And al-gha'it is usually used for the feces, or defecating. فلا تستقبلوا القبلة, do not face the qibla. ولا تستدبروها, and do not give your back to the qibla. ولكن, but rather, شرقوا أو غربوا, face the east or the west. The ulama, they mentioned, many of them, that this was to the people in Medina. So if people are in Medina, and Medina is in north of Mecca, so to face the qibla or to give the back to the qibla, which basically facing north or south, but rather go to the east or the west. And that hadith, if you remember, and it shows in the screen, the last one that was mentioned as far as the makruh, and nayyarain, that it's disliked to face the sun or the moon, where we said that the other opinion also in the madhab, that it's not makruh, and that hadith shows why it's not makruh. Because وَلَكِنْ شَرِّقُوا أَوْ غَرِّبُوا, that means they have to face the sun. Because they have to face the east or the west, since they are forbidden from facing the qibla or giving their back to the qibla. So شَرِّقُوا أَوْ غَرِّبُوا, this refers to the people of al-Madinah. And if it's other than al-Madinah, the first part of the hadith is still valid, which means do not face the qibla and do not give your back to the qibla if you have a choice, if you are in the jungle, if you are in the desert, and so on. He says here in the sharh, ويكفي انحرافه عن جهة القبلة. ويكفي is sufficient from الكفاية. It's sufficient. انحرافه, his انحراف. انحراف is to deviate, is to move a little bit away from the straight path. So ويكفي انحرافه عن جهة القبلة, from the direction of the qibla. So a person, once he just move himself away from the facing the qibla, this is sufficient. وحائل, and حائل. حائل is a barrier. وحيل بينهم وبين ما يشتهون. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about the disbelievers, there's a barrier between them and what they used to desire. So حائل is the barrier. ولو كمؤخرة رحل, even if it is مؤخرة رحل. كمؤخرة, so مؤخرة رحل, or the like of مؤخرة رحل. مؤخرة is the end of things, is the back of things. So الرحل is the mount where they would put it on the animal, in the back of the animal, which is like a stick, and it's like 1 arm length. So that means if there is a barrier between him and the qibla, even if it's as high as an arm length, then this is sufficient. That means he's not facing the qibla in the openness. And that, as the ulama, they mentioned, to cover himself when he's sitting in the openness, so that his aura is not shown. ولا يعتبر القرب من الحائل. ولا يعتبر, that means it's not recognized. It's not a thing to be recognized or something to be done. لا اعتبار لها. That means is not of anything. To be close to الحائل or the barrier. So when a person says, okay, if he has a ha'il, if he has a barrier between him and the qibla, and this ha'il, even if it's as high as an arm length, so that means it's permissible to face the qibla or to give back to the qibla. And the previous mas'ala here does not apply. So how close is the person to the ha'il? He doesn't have to be close. That's basically the last statement here. He doesn't have to be very close to the ha'il. So, and this is, of course, the matter has a differences of opinions here, and the hadith is clear, and there's statements from the Sahaba, like Hudayfa radiallahu anhu, when they went to Asham and they found that the marahid, or the places where it's already built for people to use bathrooms, and they found it facing the Qibla, and they said, فَكُنَّا نَنْحَرِفْ. They used to sit and move away from facing the Qibla and ونستغفر الله and seeking forgiveness from Allah. So again, this is only if it's fil fada, in the openness. This is what the madhab is upon, is that it's haram to intentionally to face the Qibla or to give back to the Qibla fi غير bunyan, in other than the building. And what takes the haram away is to move one's direction away from the Qibla and having a barrier, even if it's as tall as مؤخرة الرحل, which is as tall as an arm length, and it doesn't have to be close to the حائل. He says ويكره استقبالها حال الاستنجاء. So this is يكره استقبالها. It's disliked, it's makruh to face the qibla حال الاستنجاء, while a person is making istinja. So here, a person, after he finished going to the bathroom, and now he's cleaning himself. And if he's cleaning himself and facing the qibla, it's not haram, it's only makruh, because it's not the same as the act itself. So this can be put under the makruh, under the what's makruh above. But it's mentioned here because it's part of the same mas'ala of facing the qibla. He says, the second one, وَلُبْثُهُ فَوْقَ حَاجَتِهِ. The second thing which is haram in the madhab is to, that's why he says, وَيَحْرُمُ لُبْثُهُ. Al-lubth, and we mentioned this before, is to stay in a place. قال قالوا لبثنا يوما أو بعض يوم, as in Surah Al-Kahf. لبثنا, that means we stayed. So وَيَحْرُمُ لُبْثُهُ. And you be careful, because this is a tha', not a sin. Because al-lubs is the garment, wearing something, but al-lubth is to stay in a place. So وَيَحْرُمُ, it's haram, لُبْثُهُ, his staying, meaning while going to the bathroom, while defecating or urinating, فَوْقَ حَاجَتِهِ, above his need, above his haja, above his need. So this is a mas'ala here. A person finished what he entered the bathroom for. Why is he staying in the bathroom? Why is he staying in the state of sitting as if he is still relieving himself? In the madhab, this is haram. If there's no need. If there's no need. More than what he needs. And it doesn't have to be that he's constantly relieving himself, because he might be just waiting for something to be relieved from. So وَيَحْرُمُ لُبْثُهُ فَوْقَ حَاجَتِهِ. He says here in the sharh, لِمَا فِيهِ مِنْ كَشْفِ الْعَوْرَةِ. That's the reason why in the madhab it's haram. Because it has كشف العورة, exposing one's private part بلا حاجة, without a reason. So without a reason. It should not be uncovered without a reason, without a need. وهو مضر عند الأطباء, and it's harmful according to the doctors, according to the medical doctors. So now this is the second part of it, as I mentioned before, as ulama they mention. Sometimes the ulama in the books of fiqh, they would mention something in their time that the atibba, or the medical doctors at their time, would consider harmful, or things like this. So they would mention that, and they would give a ruling, and it's usually, if it's well established as a agreed upon. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, لا ضرر ولا ضرار. That means it's not permissible to harm yourself or to harm others. That's why, for example, if smoking is agreed upon that it's harmful, then the ulama would give the ruling and the fatwa that it's haram. And this is a very obvious thing. But if it's not, or they discovered, or it becomes clear that it's not harmful, then nobody is to attribute this to the shara. No one is to attribute it to the deen because it's mentioned in the books of fiqh. And we give the example of the water that is exposed to the sun, where they used to believe that it causes leprosy. Allahu A'lam if this is true or not. But if this is true, then of course this is not a good thing for a person to expose himself to a disease. But this is not the reason why in the madhab it's not permissible to stay more than what a person is needed. What's the reason for it is كشف العورة بلا حاجة, to expose the aura without a need for a person to do so, because we are commanded to cover our private part unless there's a need. So a person should be at ease, and this is that's why he says ويحرم لبثه فوق حاجته. And of course, this is other reasons they mentioned, because it might be harmful to those who are waiting to go to the bathroom, and it's waste of one's time, and it's harmful and things like this. And that's why we have to be careful with these matters, especially if a person is doing something else, reading, watching. Then he says, وَيَحْرُمُ let's read first the matn. وَبَوْلُهُ فِي طَرِيقٍ وَظِلٍّ نَافِعٍ وَتَحْتَ شَجَرَةٍ عَلَيْهَا ثَمَرَةٍ. So now here, continuing with the list of what's haram. وَيَحْرُمُ بَوْلُهُ, and it's haram to urinate. بَوْلُهُ, his urination. And in the sharh, وَتَغَوُّطُهُ, and of course, if the bawl is mentioned, so التغوط is من باب أولى. That means it comes under the same ruling by default, because al-bawl is lighter than al-gha'it. Al-gha'it is the defecation. So وَتَغَوُّطُهُ is his defecating. So if the bawl is haram, that means al-taghawut is by default then is also haram. في طريق مسلوك, في طريق, in a path. مسلوك, that means people are taking it as a path. So في طريق مسلوك, people are using it, and that's why it's haram, because it's harmful to people. وظل نافع, وظل نافع, and shade that is benefiting people, which would sit under the shade. So it's not permissible for someone to use that shade as a place to relieve himself with urinating or so. And there's a hadith about that from the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. ومثله, he says in the sharh, and the like of this, مشمس زمن الشتاء. مشمس from الشمس, the sun. So the place is مشمس. The place is sunny. So that's what sunny means. So sunny, مشمس. The place is sunny. زمن الشتاء, in the winter time, because this is a place where people would like to sit during the winter. During the summer, they can't stand under the sun. They don't want to stand under the sun, so they would look for the shade. And during the winter time, they want to have if the sun is there, then they want to be there. So it's not permissible to use also a place that is مشمس زمن الشتاء. ومتحدث الناس, and the like of the same ruling, متحدث, the place where people would stand and speak or meet, and things like this. ومتحدث الناس, and that goes back to what has been mentioned earlier, in which the sunnah is to go far where people do not see the person whatsoever. And this is where I'm just saying something on the side. When people in some parts of the world, you would find them, because there's no public restrooms, they might take a side on the street or on the highway, and then they urinate, or this is all not permissible whatsoever. And as you see here, this is already, we have it in our deen, right? Where people can see them, or they would harm people, or next to a wall, or people might walk there. All of that is haram. and people need to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they can find ways, but not in front of people or close to the people, or things that can be harmful. And the harm can be just for the fact that people can see someone from a distance. That's harmful. That's not a pleasant thing for a person to see. This is other. And also with the smell, and also with the other things that comes with it. So this is وَبَوْلُهُ فِي طَرِيقٍ وَظِلٍّ نَافِعٍ, and as he said in the Sharh, and the like of that, anything that is benefiting for the people, even if it's a sunny place during the winter time, or a place where people would stand and talk. وَتَحْتَ شَجَرَةٍ عَلَيْهَا ثَمَرَةٍ, and also under a tree, which is also stated clearly in the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, under a tree, عليها ثمرة. That tree has a thamara, has a fruit in it, has a produce in it, anything. Why? لأنه يقذرها, because it makes the tree dirty. When a person urinate under that tree or defecate, and it can get into I guess to the roots of it, or it doesn't matter, it's a shajara, it's a tree. And not just that it can get into the roots of the tree, which is questionable, but the fact that the thamara, the reason why they mentioned this is because the thamara, the fruit or anything like that, can fall onto the najasa, and then of course makes it dirty. That's يقذرها. يقذر what? الثمرة, makes the thamara dirty if the thamara falls onto the najasa. And by the way, this is if it's the bawl and the gha'it of the human being. This is not permissible for a person to do that. The same thing if a person intentionally, they make their animals urinate under a tree or something like this. This is something that is also not permissible. لأنه يقذرها, makes it dirty. وكذا في مورد الماء, and the same thing in the places where there's water, where people might use the water, drink the water. وتغوطه بماء مطلقا, and also the same thing to make or to defecate in water مطلقا, in the period, at all times, whether it's running or not running, not to defecate in water. So this is as he mentioned in the Sharh. So after this is what's mentioned here of the haram. So he says ويحرم استقبال القبلة واستدبارها في غير بنيان ولبثه فوق حاجته وبوله في طريق وظل نافع وتحت شجرة عليها ثمرة. Then after that he says ويستجمر ثم يستنجي بالماء ويجزئه الاستجمار. Now he's going to talk about the actual cleaning oneself. And there's some details there that boils down to the fact to clean oneself without waswas, without being extreme. And as long as a person clean himself, this is what the objective is, to remove the najasa to one's best ability. So some of these details, so we're going to read it inshallah. يستجمر, and we talked al-istijmar from al-jimar, which is the stones, and comes with the stones, anything that falls into the same category, paper, tissues, and so on. So يستجمر بحجر أو نحوه, with a stone or the like of it, as we said. ثم يستنجي بالماء. ثم, when you see ثم, that means there's tartib, there's order here. Then he يستنجي بالماء, then he make istinja with the water. So when there is istijmar and istinja mentioned together in the same context, one refers to the stone or the tissue, and one refers to the water. So first to use a tissue or a paper or a stone, then ثم يستنجي بالماء, then to use the water. لفعله صلى الله عليه وسلم, because this is the action of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. And he said the hadith is reported by Imam Ahmad وغيره من حديث عائشة رضي الله عنها وصححه الترمذي. And الترمذي said it's a sound hadith. فإن عكس كره. فإن عكس, if he does the opposite, this is عكس. And عكس is a past tense, referring to the doer of it. كره is disliked, so it's makruh. And what's the opposite? That means he make istinja with the water first and then the stone. And This is with regards to the actual istinja, not drying off. Because if a person used the water first and just used water, and then after he's done, he wants to dry himself up. So he's drying himself up with a paper, with a tissue. Then it's not makruh. Why? Because he's not cleaning himself with the paper. He's drying himself from the water. And what's meant here is that the actual istinja or istijmar, that means he use water a little bit and there's still najasa. Basically, that's what the mas'ala. You have to picture the mas'ala or understand it in the right way. What is meant here by the statement is that a person used water for istinja and there's still najasa. There's still najasa. So then after that, he would use stone or a tissue. This is where he says it's makruh to do it like this. Why? Because it's very obvious. It's going to cause the najasa to spread out more because you just put a little bit of water that causes the najasa to be spread more, and then it becomes more difficult when you use the paper or a stone. And that's why it's makruh this way. But if it's meant to dry off, then it's okay. So يستجمر ثم يستنجي بالماء ويجزئه الاستجمار. ويجزئه, and this word we'll see it a lot in fiqh, of course. Al-ijza', first of all, this is a verb, present tense, and the ha refers to the doer. يجزئه, that means from al-ijza'. Al-ijza' is what's sufficient. It's good enough. It makes a person fulfilled what is needed. So if it's fard, if we're talking about something obligatory, then al-ijza'. What is al-ijza'? If you do this, then you did the obligatory part. If you're talking about something mustahab, recommended, to fulfill that recommendation, al-ijza' is to do, if you do this, that means you did the recommended act, and so on. So وَيُجْزِئُهُ al-istijmar. What's sufficient for the person is al-istijmar, is to use the stone. So using the stone only, or the tissue only, is sufficient. Those who say that you have to use water, there's no evidence of that. It's not an obligation. So before we continue, as you see here, there are levels of goodness, or levels of what is best versus what is sufficient when it comes to al-istinja. The best state, the best one, as mentioned before, is to use stone or a tissue first and then water. This is the best, right? The second level, this is if you have both. The second level, if you use water only, that's better definitely than to use the stone. And the third level, which is also sufficient, but this is the least of them, is to use the stone only or the tissue only. But using the tissue only, if a person says, even if there's water, is it sufficient to use the tissue only? He says here, the sharh, حتى مع وجود الماء. Yes, even if there's water present, if a person uses tissues only, that's fine. As long as the tissue comes out after wiping without any traces of najasa. He says, لكن الماء أفضل. But of course, the water is أفضل, is better. ويجزئه الاستجمار. So الاستجمار is sufficient for him. And that's why يجزئه, when you see it, it doesn't necessarily mean this is the best thing for you to do or the most perfect act. It's just sufficient. It's good enough. He says, إِلَّمْ, this is all okay, or al-istijmar only is okay, but as long as إِلَّمْ يَعْدُ الْخَارِجُ مَوْضِعَ الْعَادَةِ. Make sure that you have the right dabt, or you say it in the right way. إِلَّمْ يَعْدُ الْخَارِجُ. إِلَّمْ يَعْدُ الْخَارِجُ مَوْضِعَ الْعَادَةِ. يَعْدُ from التعدي, from transgressing, from being more than what it's, or beyond what it's supposed to be. This is what التعدي comes from. العدو, the transgressor, the enemy. So إن لم يعدو أي يتجاوز. He describes this for us. يعدو means يتجاوز, to be beyond. الخارج موضع العادة. الخارج is what comes out. And as we see, always they use the non-explicit words in the Arabic language, and this is how the matter should be. إن لم يعد الخارج here the najasa, what comes out. If it does not go beyond موضع العادة, the موضع, the place of العادة, or the place where it's usually supposed to be in. So instead of going explicitly into the details. So if it's a normal way, and a person use the istijmar only, that's fine. But if the najasa spreads in more places, and he mentioned that in the sharh, it spreads in more places than the norm, then you have to use water. Stone is not enough, or tissue is not enough. He says مثل, the like of which, أن ينتشر الخارج على شيء من الصفحة. We'll go through this quickly, inshallah ta'ala, because it's details that it's, hopefully, inshallah ta'ala, should be obvious. That ينتشر, al-intishar is to spread out. Al-kharij, what comes out, which is the impurity. على شيء من الصفحة, on any part of الصفحة. الصفحة is the back of the person, where the buttocks, where a person sits on. So if there's the najasa comes there, then the al-istijmar is not sufficient. You have to wash it with water. أو يمتد إلى الحشفة امتدادا غير معتاد, or يمتد إلى الحشفة, or it get extended to al-hashafa. And al-hashafa is the part of the front private part, where the circumcision is to be done to it. امتدادا, in a way that is extended, غير معتاد, something that is not normal, something that, an exceptional situation happened. So that means al-istijmar is not sufficient. He has to wash it with water. That's why he said فلا يجزئ فيه إلا الماء. So لا يجزئ, it is not sufficient for it except water, which becomes the ruling of you have a najasa on your body, right? You have to wash it with water. So the place of al-kharij, the place where the urine or the feces comes out, this is where the matter is at ease, because that's the norm, and you don't have to you don't have to wash it with water. But other than that, then to use water if there's najasa on it. كقبلي الخنثى المشكل. كقبلي, two here. This is مثنى, this is dual. القبل is the front. So قبلي, two fronts, and al-qubul and versus ad-dubur. Al-qubul is it's the word that they use for awra, the private part, the front private part. Each and every one of us, we have qubul and dubur. Al-qubul is the front one, and the dubur is the back one. Right? See, these are two private parts. Everyone has two private parts. Here, qubulay, two fronts, two front private parts. This is al-khuntha al-mushkil. Al-khuntha is the hermaphrodites, the one that has two private parts, both male and female. Al-mushkil. This is, they call al-khuntha al-mushkil, hermaphrodite. The mushkil, that not sure whether he is male or female. So in that case, the like of that is the one that has al-khuntha al-mushkil. He has qubulay, he has two private parts. ومخرج غير فرج. مخرج غير فرج. So the khuntha al-mushkil, he has to wash with water. And it's very obvious why. And also the makhraj غير فرج. If there's a makhraj, if there's a thing, a passage that goes out of the body, but other than the private part. Someone that he had a surgery, so they had to get the feces out in a different opening. So does that opening, the rules applies with al-istinja in it? No, this is an exceptional situation. So that is to be, if it's feasible, to clean it with water, not with a tissue. وتنجس مخرج بغير خارج. وتنجس مخرج بغير خارج. And the tanajjus is the act of a place becomes najis, impure. مخرج, a passage that goes out. بغير خارج, without a kharij, without feces or urine, which is the kharij, as we said. So it becomes, say for example, the private part, whether it's the front or the back, if it becomes najis or impure by other than one's urine or feces. That's basically what it says. You know, if it happened, get splattered back. Uh, if for example, changing the diaper and the child urinate, I'm just anything. So the urination comes onto the body of the person, right? So it's not yours; it's from someone else. Or any najasa, then it has to be washed with water. This is just examples of when he mentioned here that it has to be water and it's not sufficient to use stone or tissue. So we get from all of this that what's from al-ijza with the istijbar is موضع العادة, the place where normally the impurities comes out from. Okay, so this is what is mentioned here. And then he says ولا يجب غسل نجاسة وجنابة بداخل فرج ثيب, and it's not obligatory ولا يجب to wash najasa, impurity, and janaba, if a person is in state of janaba that they have to take a shower, بداخل فرج ثيب, in the inside of the private part of a thayyib, and the thayyib is the woman that was previously married versus the virgin, because that's inside. It's not outside. You're only commanded to wash what's outside, not what's inside. ولا داخل حشفة أقلف غير مفتوق. And the same thing, and it's not obligatory to wash inside the hashafa, and the hashafa is the place of circumcision. Al-aqlaf is the one that is not circumcised. غير مفتوق, if it's not opened. Right, so this is just something on the side that it's not obligatory to wash these places because it's inside, not the outside. So that gives us a meaning here that what is being washed in istinja is the outside, not the inside. It's only the outside. Anything that is inside, it is not to be washed. And of course, this is with ease because, as mentioned before, it's to one's best ability. And as long as there's no najasa, and saying no najasa is to one's best ability, and that's sufficient, meaning the tissue comes out clean, then a person is clean. So I'm not sure if we have a little bit left, but I don't want to give you too much. Let's stop here, inshallah, so that things would settle in and get comprehended well, inshallah, because we don't have to rush it, but just to make sure, inshallah, that you understand every word. We don't have to be also extreme. If you do, mashallah, if you want to say what's the Arab of this and that, but it's just be at ease, inshallah, and just to make sure that every word is clear and the mas'ala is clear, and to make sure that you study the book. Again, I'm reminding everyone that we're studying the book. So inshallah, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will, and we finish the book, you studied the book. And you can always refer to the book. And that would be a life a life changing for a person. If you finished one of these books that are well established in fiqh, and you can always refer back to the book, you have your notes, regardless of exams. Exams is not that important, and I'm saying that clearly. But what you have your notes, you have the understanding of every word and things like this, and you put the effort in it, inshallah. This is basically the first real serious step in studying fiqh, and it makes a huge difference afterwards in understanding the next level of books and the mutawalat, the longer books of fiqh and things of that nature. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it benefiting for each and every one of us, inshallah. Let's see the attendance code, inshallah, is haja. The attendance code is haja, as a need or necessity. Barakallahu fikum. So inshallah, we have the next class is Saturday for the tafsir and Saturday night for the Arabic, inshallah. And study, inshallah, till we'll see the exam إن شاء الله. بارك الله فيكم. طيب، وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم ربنا وبحمدك، أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت، أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.